When I first met her, she seemed untouchable. The kind of woman who carried herself with quiet authority, the kind that made even the most restless students straighten in their chairs. In class, she was precise, measured, and demanding. Every word she spoke felt sharpened to perfection, like she had waited carefully before letting it leave her lips. She wasn't cruel, never unfair, but she had a reputation for being strict. People respected her. Some feared her. And I admired her more than I dared admit. She was in her early 40s, though I never thought of her as older in the way people usually mean it. To me, she seemed timeless. Her presence was elegant, every movement graceful, as though she belonged to another world entirely. I'd catch myself studying the way she adjusted her glasses before diving into a lecture, or how she clasped her hands together while waiting for silence to settle over the room. There was discipline in her, yes, but also a quiet softness hidden beneath. That night, I saw her outside of the classroom for the very first time. It was almost surreal. I had slipped into a small café near campus, hoping for a quiet place to read, when I noticed her seated at a corner table by the window. The glow of the hanging lamps pooled around her like warm honey, softening the sharp edges of her usual composure. She wasn't standing at a podium, commanding attention. She was just a woman, alone, stirring her tea slowly as if lost in thought. For a moment, I hesitated. Should I go over? Should I leave her to her solitude? Something in the tilt of her shoulders, though, something in the way she stared absently out the window, made me brave enough to approach. When she looked up and recognized me, her expression shifted in a way I'd never seen before. In class, her eyes were sharp, steady. Here, they softened, widening just slightly, and I swore I saw a flicker of surprise, followed by something gentler. "You're out late," she said, her voice carrying that same smooth cadence, but lighter, unburdened by authority. I smiled, nervously perhaps. "Just needed a change of scenery. Didn't expect to see you here." She gestured toward the empty chair across from her. "Then sit. I promise I won't grade you for your choice of drink." It was such a small joke, but the way her lips curved into the faintest smile sent an unfamiliar warmth rushing through me. I ordered coffee and settled across from her, suddenly aware of the closeness, the way her perfume, subtle, floral, drifted across the table with every shift of air. And as we sat there, two people stripped of titles and roles, I realized something. The woman I thought I knew, the strict professor who carried herself like stone, she was different here. Softer. Warmer. Human. That was the night the first crack appeared in the walls between us. Once the first awkwardness of sitting across from her faded, something unexpected happened: conversation. Not the kind bound by assignments or deadlines, not the polished questions of a student to a professor, but something real, something personal. At first, we stayed safe, orbiting around literature. She asked me what I was reading lately, and I admitted, half embarrassed, that I'd gone back to a book she had assigned months ago, one I hadn't appreciated fully at the time. Her eyes lit up at that, the way they did in class when she knew someone had truly engaged with the text. But instead of turning it into a lecture, she tilted her head and asked, "And how do you see it differently now?" Her voice wasn't demanding here, it was curious. Genuine. And so I told her. I spoke not like a student trying to impress, but like someone offering a thought to a friend. And she listened. Really listened. Her gaze didn't wander, her attention didn't drift. She had this way of leaning slightly forward, elbows resting on the table, as if my words were the most important thing in the world for those few moments. As we went on, the conversation drifted. From books to music, from music to travels we wished we had taken. She told me how she once dreamed of living abroad but had stayed close to home for family reasons. "I don't regret it," she said softly, her finger tracing the rim of her teacup, "but sometimes I wonder about the life I didn't live." There was something unguarded in that confession. I had only ever known her as steady, in control. To hear her speak of longing, of paths not taken, it made her feel achingly human, and more beautiful than ever. I remember the way the cafe lights touched her hair, pulling threads of gold from the darker strands. The way the hum of quiet conversations around us faded into nothing when she laughed. It wasn't the restrained laugh I'd heard in class. This one was lighter, almost girlish, breaking through her practiced composure. And when her hand brushed mine across the table, a fleeting accident as she reached for her cup, something in me sparked awake. Her skin was warm. The touch was brief, no more than a second, but my pulse stumbled. She didn't flinch away. Instead, she smiled, small, knowing, as if she had felt that same shift in the air between us. "I hope you don't think less of me for saying too much," she murmured. "Not at all," I said quickly, maybe too quickly. "I think it's the first time I feel like I'm really hearing you, not just the version of you who teaches." Her eyes lingered on mine, holding them with a softness that made the world blur around us. She didn't reply immediately. She didn't have to. In that silence, there was trust. And in that trust, the first spark of something I hadn't dared to imagine until now. That night, the distance between us began to shrink quietly, invisibly, one shared secret at a time. By the time we left the cafe, the city had quieted into that in-between hour, late enough that the streets had thinned, but not so late that the night felt dangerous. The air carried a faint chill, the kind that makes you aware of every brush of fabric against your skin. We stepped outside together, and for a brief moment, I wondered if she would simply nod, say goodnight, and disappear into the dark. Instead, she lingered, adjusting the strap of her bag on her shoulder before glancing at me with a look that was half teasing, half hesitant. "In class I'm strict," she said, her tone playful, her eyes catching mine in the golden spill of a street lamp, "but tonight, I'll let you break a few rules." The words landed softly, but their weight was undeniable. My heart thudded in my chest, not because of what she said exactly, but because of what it meant: an invitation, however small, to see her outside the boundaries I had always respected. I laughed nervously, not sure what rule I was breaking just by standing there with her, yet feeling as though I already had. She smiled at my reaction, the corners of her lips curving with the kind of mischief I never imagined seeing in her. We fell into step together, walking side by side down the quiet street. Our shoulders brushed now and then, each time sending a spark of awareness through me. I didn't pull away. Neither did she. The distance between us was narrowing in ways I couldn't explain, in ways I wasn't sure I even wanted to resist. The world around us seemed hushed. The shops had closed hours ago, their shutters drawn. Only the soft glow of streetlights and the faint hum of traffic in the distance reminded me we weren't alone in the world. But it felt as though we were the strict professor and her student, stripped of those roles, simply walking together as two people caught in the fragile magic of a night too rare to last. Our conversation had shifted, too. It wasn't about literature anymore, or even regrets. It was lighter, peppered with small jokes, easy laughter, and those stolen glances that said more than either of us dared to put into words. At one point, she adjusted her scarf, and her hand brushed against mine. This time, neither of us pulled away. My pulse leapt, but I matched her stride, steady, as though holding her nearness was the most natural thing in the world. The rules she spoke of, the invisible ones, the unspoken ones, we both knew what they were. Teacher and student. Experience and youth. Expectation and reality. And yet, in that moment, those rules seemed less like walls and more like thin veils, ready to be lifted if only we had the courage. She didn't say it aloud, but I felt it in the way her steps slowed, in the way her gaze lingered longer than necessary. Tonight, the lines were blurred. Tonight, for the first time, she wasn't just my professor, she was a woman, walking beside me, daring me with every smile to cross into something uncharted. And though I couldn't put it into words yet, I knew, a single rule had already been broken. The city streets eventually gave way to something quieter, a park that stretched out like a patch of calm against the restless hum of traffic. It was her idea. "It's not far," she said, her voice carrying a hint of suggestion, as though she were inviting me into a part of her world that few people got to see. We turned down a stone path that wound beneath tall trees, their branches reaching overhead like a canopy. The night was cool but not uncomfortable, the kind of air that wakes your senses, makes you notice the rhythm of your own breath. Gravel crunched softly beneath our steps, each sound amplified in the stillness. There weren't many people around, just the occasional passerby, a jogger with earbuds, a couple holding hands in the distance. Mostly, it was just us, walking slowly, as if neither of us wanted to hurry the moment. Our conversation shifted with the change of setting. Here, away from the lamps and chatter of the café, she seemed freer, as though the darkness offered her a kind of protection. She spoke of small things first, her favorite seasons, the book she kept on her bedside table, the old records she still played at night. Then, gradually, her words sank deeper. I think the hardest part, she said, her gaze fixed on the path ahead, is how easily people forget that I'm more than a teacher. To them, I'm just the role. Not a person. Not someone with feelings or doubts. I glanced at her, catching the faint strain in her features. It startled me, that quiet confession. She had always seemed so steady, so self-assured, but beneath it all was a woman who carried the weight of being seen only for what she gave others, never for who she was. I don't see you that way, I said softly. My voice felt too small in the vastness of the night, but I meant every word. That made her pause. She turned her head just slightly, eyes flickering toward mine, and for the briefest second, I saw her guard falter. Something tender and unspoken hung in that look. The breeze picked up, tugging a loose strand of her hair across her cheek. Without thinking, she reached up to tuck it behind her ear, and I noticed, just barely, the tremor in her hand. She wasn't as untouchable as I once believed. She was human, vulnerable, quietly longing. We slowed near a small clearing where a bench sat beneath an old oak tree. She gestured toward it, and we sat down, not too close, not too far. Our arms brushed faintly, and the warmth of that small contact cut through the coolness of the night. Silence followed, not heavy but charged, the kind that makes every sound, the rustle of leaves, the distant chirp of crickets, feel like part of the moment. She didn't move away. Neither did I. In that quiet, the truth was unmistakable. Beneath her strength and composure was a longing to be understood. And beneath my respect for her was something deeper, something growing stronger with every step we had taken tonight. The park was still. The night was ours. And though no words named it yet, something had shifted between us forever. The bench beneath us was cool, its wooden slats rough against my palms as I tried to steady myself. I was aware of everything, the faint rustle of leaves overhead, the distant hum of traffic beyond the park, the rhythm of her breathing beside me. She sat close enough that her sleeve brushed against mine when she shifted, but not close enough for it to seem intentional. That in-between space between us was alive, humming with a tension I didn't have words for. I stole a glance at her. The soft glow of a nearby lamppost caught her profile, outlining the elegant curve of her cheek, the subtle crease at the corner of her eyes when she was lost in thought. She wasn't looking at me, her gaze was forward, distant, but her presence pulled at me like gravity. Silence stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was heavy with meaning, as though every unspoken thought we shared hovered in the air between us. I wanted to say something, anything, but the weight of the moment pinned my voice down. Finally, she spoke, her tone quiet, thoughtful. Do you ever wonder if you're on the right path? If the life you're living is the one you were meant to? I turned toward her. Every day. That made her smile faintly, a smile tinged with sadness. I used to think I had everything figured out. A career, stability, respect. But lately, it feels like I'm living inside a role, not inside my own skin. Her honesty caught me off guard. I had always seen her as unshakable, someone who couldn't possibly doubt herself. To hear her admit this here, with me, felt like being entrusted with something fragile. You don't have to carry all of that alone, I said softly. She looked at me then, really looked. Her eyes lingered, and for the first time, I didn't see the professor, the authority, the figure I had admired from a distance. I saw the woman beneath. The warmth in her gaze made my chest tighten. Neither of us moved at first. The air between us seemed to shrink, alive with possibility. I could feel the warmth radiating from her body, subtle but undeniable, a contrast to the cool night air. Every small detail felt amplified, the way her breath hitched when our eyes locked, the way my pulse quickened in my throat. I wanted to reach out, to close the distance, but I didn't. Respect, hesitation, fear, they all tangled inside me. Still, I knew she felt it too. The way her fingers curled slightly on the bench, as if resisting the urge to move closer. The way her lips parted, only to close again without a word. The silence between us said everything. That night, sitting under the shelter of that old oak tree, the line between us blurred more than ever. Nothing was spoken, nothing was defined. Yet in the quiet, in the brush of her arm against mine and the weight of her gaze, I felt it, the pull of something inevitable, waiting just beyond the edges of restraint. The silence stretched, but it wasn't empty. It was charged, fragile, alive with all the words we weren't saying. I could hear the faint thud of my own heartbeat, steady and insistent, as though it knew something my mind was still hesitant to admit. She shifted slightly on the bench, turning her body toward me. The movement was small, but it pulled my attention entirely. Her eyes searched mine, steady but vulnerable, as if she were weighing a decision she'd kept locked away for too long. Then, softly, almost like a sigh, she said, "You're too thoughtful for your own good." The corners of her lips curved with a teasing smile, but there was something else beneath it, something tender, almost trembling. And before I could respond, her hand moved. Slow, deliberate. It crossed the narrow space between us and came to rest on mine. I froze. Not out of discomfort, but out of awe. Her hand was warm against my skin, her touch firm yet careful, as though she feared I might pull away. My breath caught, my chest tightening under the weight of the moment. Without thinking, I turned my palm upward, clasping her hand in mine. Our fingers threaded together naturally, as though they had been waiting for this all along. That simple act, the joining of hands, felt more intimate than any kiss could have in that instant. Her thumb traced a slow line across the back of my hand, sending a shiver up my arm. My skin buzzed with awareness, every nerve alive beneath her touch. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional, an acknowledgement of something unspoken finally breaking through the surface. She looked down at our entwined hands, then back up at me. Her smile was faint, but her eyes carried both relief and mischief. "A rule worth breaking," she whispered. I laughed softly, though my voice shook. I didn't even know we'd written the rules. "We didn't," she replied, her tone low, almost conspiratorial. "But they were there. Always. Hovering between us." Her fingers tightened around mine, grounding me. "And tonight. I don't want to follow them." The world around us seemed to fade. The park, the night, the occasional sound of distant footsteps, it all blurred into insignificance. All that existed was her hand in mine, the steady warmth of her skin, the quiet confession that had passed between us. I wanted to hold on forever, to freeze the moment before reality could intrude again. For once, she wasn't the strict professor. She wasn't the composed woman who never let her guard down. She was just her, soft, brave, imperfect, and real. And sitting there beside her, with her hand resting firmly in mine, I knew I would never see her the same way again. Tonight, the lines had shifted. Tonight, the rules had bent. And for the first time, we had chosen each other over everything else. We stayed like that for a while, hands clasped, silence speaking louder than any words could. I didn't want to move, didn't want to break the spell that had wrapped itself around us. But eventually, reality reminded us that the night couldn't last forever. The cool air deepened, the park grew quieter, and the lamp seemed dimmer than before. Reluctantly, she slipped her hand from mine, though not without a lingering squeeze, as if to say, "Remember this." She stood, smoothing her scarf over her shoulders, and for a moment she looked torn, caught between the woman she was with me tonight and the professor the world expected her to be again tomorrow. We walked slowly toward the edge of the park, neither of us rushing the inevitable. The gravel crunched beneath our steps, and though we were side by side, I felt the unspoken heaviness settling between us. Not regret, never that. But the quiet knowledge that when the sun rose, the rules would return. At the park's gate, she stopped. The faint glow of a lamppost haloed around her, softening the weariness in her features. She turned toward me, and for the first time, I saw no trace of the strict professor, no armor of composure. Just her open, gentle, and impossibly human. "Tomorrow," she said with a faint laugh, "I'll be strict again. You'll sit in class, and I'll pretend like tonight never happened." Her words were light, but her eyes told a different story. I swallowed hard, afraid of saying the wrong thing. "And tonight?" She held my gaze, and her expression softened. "Tonight, thank you for reminding me that I can just be myself." Her voice trembled on the last word, and it made my chest ache in a way I couldn't explain. She stepped closer, close enough that I felt the warmth radiating from her body against the cool night air. And then, without hesitation, she leaned in. Her lips didn't seek mine. Instead, they pressed softly against my cheek, warm, lingering, and impossibly tender. A kiss that wasn't about passion but about gratitude, about acknowledgement, about everything words would have ruined. When she drew back, her smile was quiet, almost shy. "Good night," she whispered, her breath brushing my skin like the faintest echo of her kiss. And then she turned, walking away down the empty street. I stood there, unmoving, watching until her figure dissolved into the darkness. My cheeks still tingled where her lips had been, and my hand still carried the ghost of her touch. I knew tomorrow she would be my professor again. The lines would return, the roles would settle back into place. But tonight, just this one night, we had stepped outside of them. Tonight, we had been nothing more, and nothing less, than two people who found each other in the quiet spaces between rules. And no matter what came next, I would never forget the night she let me break them.